Keanu Reeves was never one for the spotlight when it came to his personal life. He believed in small gestures, unseen acts of kindness, and helping those who needed it without expecting anything in return. One rainy afternoon in New York City, Keanu found himself wandering the quieter streets, far from the tourist-packed avenues. He had always loved bookstores, real bookstores, the ones with creaky wooden floors, shelves stacked high with forgotten stories, and the faint scent of aged paper in the air. That's when he saw it. Page-Turners, an old independent bookstore squeezed between two modern glass buildings. It was nearly empty, except for a young woman at the counter flipping through a book with tired eyes. The store had an undeniable charm, but it also looked like it had seen better days. The shelves were slightly dusty, the sign outside had missing letters, and a small closing soon. "Thank you for 35 wonderful years" sign sat near the register. The bell above the door jingled softly as he walked in. The woman at the counter, probably in her late 20s, looked up and froze. "Wait, are you—" she started, but Keanu just gave her a small smile and put a finger to his lips, playfully signaling her to keep it down. "Just a guy looking for a good book," he said. She laughed lightly, still a little starstruck. "Well, you've come to the right place, at least for a little while longer." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Closing?" The woman, whose name tag read Sophie, sighed and leaned on the counter. "Yeah. My dad started this place 35 years ago, but with rising rent and online shopping, we just can't keep up. We tried everything, sales, community events, even a GoFundMe, but it's just not enough. We have a week left before we shut the doors for good." Keanu could hear the sadness in her voice. He had met plenty of struggling artists and dreamers over the years, people whose passion was drowned out by the harsh realities of life. And bookstores? They were sacred places to him. He glanced around the store, taking in the well-loved shelves and handwritten staff recommendations still pinned under books. "What's your favorite book here?" he asked. Sophie blinked. Probably The Shadow of the Wind by 𝐻𝐈𝐿 Ruiz-Zafón. It's about a hidden library of forgotten books." Keanu grinned. "Fitting." He pulled a copy off the shelf and walked toward the register, but instead of handing over his card, he did something that made Sophie's breath hitch. He grabbed a stack of books, then another and another, until he had an entire tower of books in his arms. "I'll take all of these," he said, setting them down with a quiet thud. Sophie's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" Keanu nodded. "I love books." Keanu hesitated for only a second before stepping inside. Keanu didn't stop there. That night, he made a quiet phone call to a friend who worked in real estate, then another to an anonymous donor. Within 48 hours, the bookstore's rent was paid off for the next year. A few days later, Sophie's GoFundMe suddenly exploded with donations, anonymous contributions, shout-out from celebrities, and even a video of Keanu Reeves casually browsing the shelves that had somehow gone viral. "Keanu Reeves Saves Indie Bookstore" became a trending headline, but when reporters tried to reach him, he simply waved them off. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about keeping stories alive." A week later, Page-Turners held a reopening event, expecting maybe a handful of loyal customers. Instead, hundreds showed up. The store was packed with book lovers, new customers, and even a few big-name authors who had caught wind of the story. Sophie stood at the register, overwhelmed but smiling. As Keanu walked in, she shook her head in disbelief. "You didn't have to do all this," she said. Keanu shrugged. "Good stories deserve a chance to be read." As he left, he placed one last book on the counter, a signed copy of The Shadow of the Wind. Inside, he had scribbled a note. "For Sophie and Page-Turners, because forgotten books and forgotten places always deserve a second chance." And just like that, Keanu Reeves disappeared into the city once more, leaving behind a bookstore that would never be forgotten years later. Page-Turners were still standing, thriving, in fact. A small plaque near the entrance read, "In honor of those who believe in the magic of books, the kindness of strangers, and the power of second chances." Sophie had expanded the store, dedicating a special section to books saved from closure, giving each one a second life, just as Keanu had done for the store itself. Keanu continued to visit quietly, never seeking recognition. On some nights, he and Sophie would sit in the back, sipping tea and discussing literature. Their friendship grew beyond that one act of kindness, built instead on the shared love of stories and the belief that no book and no person should ever be forgotten. As time passed, Sophie turned Page Turners into more than just a bookstore. It became a community hub, offering free literacy programs for kids, book clubs, and even an annual festival that celebrated independent authors. Keanu quietly donated to these causes, ensuring the legacy lived on. One evening, as Sophie locked up for the night, she found a small envelope taped to the door. Inside was a simple note written in Keanu's familiar handwriting. Stories never truly end. Neither does kindness. With a smile, she looked up at the darkened city skyline, knowing that somewhere out there, the man who had saved Page Turners was still out there, finding forgotten stories and making sure they were never lost again years later. When Keanu's kindness had become legend, Page Turners received an unexpected gift, a first-edition copy of Don Quixote, anonymously donated. Inside the front cover was an inscription: "For those who dare to dream, and for those who fight to keep those dreams alive." The handwriting was unmistakable. Sophie placed it in a glass case right next to the plaque by the entrance, ensuring that every visitor would know. Sometimes, the best stories aren't just the ones written on pages. They're the ones we live, the ones we share, and the ones that remind us that kindness, no matter how small, can change the world. The bookstore thrived, inspiring other independent bookstores to push forward despite hardship. It became a symbol of resilience, a testament to how even the simplest acts of kindness could create ripples that lasted generations. Sophie often wondered what had led Keanu into Page Turners that day. Fate? Coincidence? Or simply a man who knew that stories deserved a place to live? Whatever it was, she was forever grateful. And as long as Page Turners stood, the story of that rainy afternoon, the mysterious kindness of Keanu Reeves, and the magic of books would never be forgotten. Inspired by Page Turners, other independent bookstores around the country reached out. Sophie, with Keanu's quiet backing, started a foundation to help struggling bookstores. The movement grew, and soon, forgotten bookshops across the nation were given second chances. Keanu, true to form, remained in the background. But every so often, Sophie would find a note, a donation, or an anonymous book purchase that reminded her he was still watching over their shared dream. And just like that, the story continued, one book, one store, one act of kindness at a time.